Greetings and salutations, Second Star right back with more Raid Shadow Legends. And today the big news is there's a 10-time summoning event from various shards for the various High Elf champions. I guess this is an effort for Plarium to promote Faction Wars. Faction Wars came out of the gates really strong. I was super into it at first, but then it was so hard to progress initially that I think for me and a lot of people, they kind of fell out of favor as an event. And now they've made it easier. They've listened to our suggestions, thankfully, and now progressing past the first boss, it has become not quite so challenging as it was. It's still difficult. You still need the right team compositions to progress. You still need the right champions with the right skills and time them right to really get through the various fights. But when you're towards end game and you're running out of things to do, that's something you can do. Like that, like the choices you make on which champions you're going to invest in next can then kind of be predicated by which faction you're strongest in, and so you can think of which one you can finish first. So in that regard, I'm all for it, because Faction Wars is a cool idea. It's fun. You do end up using a lot of champions that you ordinarily wouldn't use or hadn't thought about using or what have you. So and the High Elf ones are actually, it's a pretty good faction. As you can see, I have 0 legendaries in the High Elf faction on this account, which is fine. They have given you, with this event, 10 times chance to get a High Elf. It doesn't actually increase your chances of getting an epic or a legendary, but should you, with their standard draw procedures, which aren't very good. Let's look at the chances real quick, in case you're unfamiliar. I know most people are, but for those of us who are not, let's hit the info button and see that through Ancient Shards, we have an 8% to get an epic, a 0.5% to get a legendary. Now in Sacreds, we have 94% chance to get an epic and 6% chance to get a legendary. Okay, so now let's look at the High Elves themselves and say, hey, is this worth investing in? Is this something I want to do? There is a summon rush going on concurrently, so if so, you can take advantage of both of these things if you are so inclined. Okay, so the champions in question are Royal. Okay, let's start out with Lyssandra. Lyssandra is a fantastic champion. She was part of a whale hunt a few months back, where she was the top prize in a tournament, and it was a bloodbath getting Lyssandra. We won't talk about that, but let's talk about her skills. Her transfers attacks one enemy and transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target. You can see that on other champions. Abbess has one that's Abbess has one similar to that in her skill set. Lyssandra's exhaustion attacks one enemy, fully depletes the target's turn meter. That is really good. And you can get that 4-turn cooldown down to 3 turns, which is awesome. And Energize, it's on a 6-turn cooldown that you can get down to 4 turns. Places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 30% and decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 30%. She's a pain. When she's the last one alive and you have one person alive, it's a duel between the two of you. She's hard to beat, just because she keeps slowing you down and speeding herself up, and it's a nasty gram. She also has an ally speed aura in all battles with 24%. So Lyssandra is definitely one of the top tier champions in this faction. She is fantastic in any faction, really. She's really good. Next, we'll go on with Royal Huntsman. Royal Huntsman is a tank killer. Let's look at his skill set. Attacks one enemy, places a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns if the attack is critical. I don't really like that aspect of it, because you have to get a crit and then get an attack buff, so it really doesn't help you until your next turn. And I like to take care of my business, 1 turn at a time. And I kind of like to depend on the attack buffs from other champions, but that's okay. Slaughter Volley, that sounds like a fun game. Attacks all enemies, places a 60% decreased defense debuff on the target for 2 turns if the attack is critical. Okay, so that is a nice A2. Decreased defense is definitely a fantastic debuff, and you can get that down to a 3-turn cooldown with the investment of 4 bucks. Is A3, Dead Aim, attacks one enemy, will ignore defense by 100%. So really good A3. Ignoring defense is a fantastic ability by for any champion. And then you can also increase the damage by an additional 25%. Really good. Royal Huntsman, well geared, can carry you through a lot of content, and especially arenas where you can get rid of those irritating champions that just won't seem to die. Okay, Ithos, if you feel like opening some Void Shards, you could get lucky and get Ithos. He's kind of similar to Royal Guard in that he is just a damage machine. Gouge, attacks one enemy, has a 20% chance of granting an extra turn. Decreases enemy max hit points by 15% of damage dealt. I don't really care so much about the max hit point portion, but the extra turn champions are among my favorites. I love that little bit of bonus that they bring when it hits. It's definitely awesome. Okay, Outburst attacks all enemies 3 times, places a 15% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Okay, good. That's a good AoE. Weaken is okay. It's not my favorite debuff, but when you combine it with a decreased defense, it's awesome. Okay, and you get that also down to 3 turns. Extinguished Life level 1. It's on a 6-turn cooldown. They can get down to 4 turns, but it's an AoE and it's always critical. Massive damage AoE. Super fun to watch. Unfortunately, I don't have an Ithos, so when I'm watching it, it's against me, and therefore it's not so fun, but still, mad respect. Okay, and also there is a crit rate in Arena by 33%, which is kind of cool. Okay, and also we are boosting up Bellinor. Bellinor is a champion that I never see. I never see him in Arena. I think it's so rare, I don't really know what to say about this champion. I know nothing about him, so let's explore together, shall we? Sword Leader is his A1, attacks one enemy, places a 30% increased crit rate buff on all allies for 1 turn if the attack is critical. Okay, well that's cool. That's cool. That's actually kind of a really cool A1. You increase the damage by a pretty decent percentage there. Was that 30%? Not bad. Still, 4 legendary books. Insurmountable is a 3-turn cooldown A2, places a 60% decreased defense and a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns on 1 enemy, then attacks them. Places a 60% increased defense buff on the champion for 2 turns if the attack kills an enemy. That's actually a really cool A2. It has that whole, the Dracomorph defense and weaken. It's not an AoE, it's only on 1, but he gets an attack right afterwards. So that's definitely going to be a really big attack against 1 champion. So that's kind of cool. And then he places an increased defense buff on the champion if it kills him. So that's actually a really very interesting A2. Overkill is his A3. Attacks 1 enemy. We will heal this champion equal to any surplus damage if the target is killed. Okay, that's fine, I guess. 4-turn cooldown, get it down to 3 turns. And then also has a 10% bonus damage in there for, I guess, for giggles. And then also has Tactical Partner. That's interesting. It's only available when Xavia is on the same team. Okay, so Xavia is also on your team. Attacks an enemy, places a 5% poison debuff, a 50% decrease attack debuff, and a 30% decrease speed debuff, and a 50% decrease accuracy debuff for 2 turns. So I guess he must be highly protective of Xavia and wants no harm to come to her. Okay, so interesting stuff. And his aura is crit rate in all battles by 24%. I'm a big fan of crit rate auras. Kind of saves you from gearing too much for crit rate, so it kind of opens up your gearing. So that's neat. I like that. I don't know if I would use Bellinor if I had him. With the Xavia, you could become interesting, but I think the cross-section of people that have both Bellinor and Xavia and are interested in bringing them both to 60 is probably a thin margin. I'd like to see that Venn diagram. Okay, Arbiter. Everyone will eventually get Arbiter if you finish all the quests in the game, but she also will be available via Shard at a 10 times bonus this time. So if you just want to risk it, it might be worth it for Arbiter because she is very good. Let's go over Arbiter, what she does if you haven't looked yet. Her Gaze of Justice attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. So it's not an AoE A1, but still, it's a fine A1. I would consider this A1 a fine A1. Enforced Humility attacks all enemies 1 time. Has a 75% chance of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn. Okay, that's a good A2. A Mentor of Heroes level 1 fills the turn meter of all allies by 30% and places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. heals them all by 25% of their max hit points if they have less than 50% hit points. A really, really nice A3. And then, of course, her Destiny's Call revives all dead allies to 35% hit points, then fills the turn meters of all of them by 20%, and then gets an extra turn if an ally was successfully revived. On a 5-turn cooldown, down from 7 turns. That is amazing. She is such a good carry, such a good support. And she increases speed in the arena by 30%. So she's definitely ubiquitous in the higher tier arena teams. Okay, down on the epic front, we have Royal Guard. I do not have a Royal Guard. I wish I had a Royal Guard, but their claim to fame is he has a max enemy hit point A2 based on his attack that attacks all enemies, and at the higher levels, it's massive. These skills become very effective at the higher levels, and you always see max enemy hit point champions, especially at the higher levels. They really clean house. Alright, so let's back up a little bit. Razor Blade is his A1, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. I like decreased defense debuff champions when they have it on their A1. I think that's really cool when you want to single out a champion for destruction. Putting the decreased defense on them is awesome. Alright, we already discussed his A2. Actually, let's look at the cooldowns. It's 4 turns, and you cannot get it down lower than 4 turns. You can only buff damage with books. Okay, good to know. Hamstring is on a 5-turn cooldown and get down to 4 turns, attacks 4 times at random. Each hit has a 60% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Each hit also has a 60% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 25%. Awesome. You can see how good he is in dungeons, especially Spider. Excellent champion. I can definitely see people trying to open shards and hoping that they pull a Royal Guard because he is fantastic. I've been wanting him for a year and I've come up snake eyes so far. That's okay. Tayrel, I do have. Tayrel is a fantastic champion, good everywhere. Everyone should have a Tayrel. If I had my way, he would be a fusion champion because he's just so good. He makes all dungeons so much easier. His Humble is his A1, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 40% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns, and the damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So he's a defense-based champion. So not only does he take a lot of damage and is really hard to kill, he also deals it really well too. So this is a really good A1. I booked mine fully. I suggest booking him just to get the most use out of him. Get the most crowd control, get the most buffs, to get the most debuffs applied. He's awesome. Okay, Singing Steel attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, so AoE decreased defense. If the target is under a decreased attack debuff from your A1, it will place a sleep debuff for 1 turn, and damage inflicted is of course proportional to defense. So really good. 4-turn cooldown, you cannot get it down to 3 turns, unfortunately, but still pretty darn good. Preemptive Strike, 5 turns, you can get down to 4 turns. Attacks an enemy, decreases the target's turn meter by 50%. If the attack fully depletes the turn meter, it will place a stun debuff for 2 turns, and damage inflicted is proportional to defense. Defense-based champion, of course it is. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And defense and all allows by 25%. Really good base stats too. Great high defense, some decent hit points. Kind of slow, but that's okay. He's just great. You definitely, if you have the opportunity to get a Tayrel, definitely, man, I can't say enough about Tayrel. Thanassel, I don't really like Thanassel. I know that he's good. I hate facing him in the arena because he's a pain, but I personally just don't like him, and I'll show you why. Sleep on an A1, kind of like Zelata, where it's not great. It's not a great debuff for an A1, and he has a really low base chance. You'd have to book it to get up. I mean, you get high with books, but it's just not great. It wakes with damage. It's just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Sleep, especially if you're in like a hit point burn team. He's gonna wake them up, and they're gonna do their skill anyway. Not a huge fan of that. Okay. Oak Skinned this is a good skill. It's 4 turns and gets down to 3 turns, which is really cool. Places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns and heals all allies by 20%. 25% of this champion's max hit points. And that's my favorite type of healer, because you can stack hit points and stack hit points and stack hit points for massive heals. And those massive heals combined with his increased defense, that is a really good skill. So I will concede to this champion that I don't really like. And I don't have anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I don't like him, but I don't really like him. But his A2, I admit, it's really good. Wither, 6 turns, the 5 turn cooldown if you put some books into it, attacks all enemies, decreases the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn. Yeah, it's fine. Not my favorite champion, but his A2 is really good. Luthia is not part of this, Virg's not part of this, Mux is not part of this, Jingle is not part of this. Battle Sage. Okay, I have a Battle Sage on my free-to-play account, and she's okay. Let's go over what she does and why she's not the best. AoE, A1, doesn't do anything special, it's just damage. You can book it up for extra damage, extra what? 25%. You know, it's fine. It's a decently hard hitting attack, but it's not great. Nature's Touch removes all debuffs on all allies, then places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. The buff can't be removed, and you can get down to a 3-turn cooldown. Another really good A2. Okay, and then her A3 is a revive. But it's a revive on death. It does last for 3 turns, but it's just hard to make work. And then you can only get it down to 4 turns. We have to put in 2 books. She doesn't have a speed aura in all battles by 19%, which is super useful. But I think overall, she's probably the weakest of the bunch of the champions we went through. Even the Nassel, who I'm not a big fan of, not a huge fan of Battle Sage either. I know some people love Battle Sage though, so if you're one of those people, put in comments why you like Battle Sage and how you built your character so good. Exemplar, now, this is a champion I really like. I have a guide on Exemplar when she was fusion food for Tormund. I like her despite the fact that she was just came out of a Girl Scout meeting. Look how seriously, was she like conscripted as a teen? She's like I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with her face. She looks like she's not can even lift up her broadsword there. Regardless, she's actually pretty good. Let's go over her skills. High Stance attacks one enemy 2 times, places an extra hit if the attack is critical. So it's really effectively a 3-hit A1. If you build her with 100% crit. So she's actually usable in Fire Knight, and she's actually really good there. I like her in Fire Knight. I took it there a lot. I've kind of retired the champion. She's in my vault now, but getting to those farming stages really helped me to have this champion. I'm a fan. I'm an Exemplar fan. I don't know what to tell you. Pincher attack. Attacks 3 times at random. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a 25% weakened buff for 2 turns. You can get that down to 2 turns. It's not bad. It really isn't. Capture level 1. Capture. It's on a 5-turn cooldown. You can get it down to 4 turns. Attacks of 1 enemy. Has a 75% chance of placing a freeze for 1 turn and a block cooldown skills for 2 turns. So you freeze them, and then even if they unfreeze, they still can't do anything but their A1. It's pretty cool, man. People ignore Exemplar, but she has a really high base attack. She's slow, but that high base attack makes up for it. And a 3-hit A1, right? And that really wants you to skill gear for crit, which increased crit rate always increases your overall damage if you pay attention to it. And getting this down to a 2-turn attack with a 3-hit weaken, I don't know, dude. Exemplar should get more love than she does. She's actually pretty good. And that's it. That's it. What do you think? Are there any of these champions that you would open shards for, knowing that there's no extra chance of actually getting an epic or legendary? I don't know, man. I don't think that I would personally. But if you don't have a Tayrel and you don't have a Royal Guard, it might be worth it, man. Just for those 2 champions, because those are fantastic. And if you get a Lyssandra, you've saved yourself $50,000 from whaling out on one. So people do spend money in these whale events, believe it or not. Okay, so let me know what you think. What are you going to do? I would like to hear it. I appreciate your guys commenting and throwing me some likes. That would be nice. Subscribe to see more of this. That's great. I want you guys to enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe out there. Have fun. And I will talk to you next time.